What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Welcome back to another Team of the Week video going over now. This is going to be week 3 of the Six Nations. What a weird weekend of rugby we had. We had teams doing absolutely nothing for nearly the entire game, followed by doing everything in the last 10 minutes. We had rulings come out that I didn't even know existed in terms of red cards. It was all sorts of chaos this weekend, made for some very interesting games. So, of course, in these Team of the Week videos, what we do is we go through each individual position following a strict set of rules, which I'll check on screen for you guys. Very different to a normal Team of the Week where we just go off stats and stuff. None of that nonsense. It's all about players I've seen live that impressed me for whatever reason, and it's basically my personal Team of the Week. And I always recommend you guys dropping down in the comment section your own Team of the Week, because it's absolutely no chance this will ever be the same as anyone else's. And then at the end we'll talk about the fantasy results, because there's been some big shifts-ups going on in that fantasy league. So starting out with the Team of the Week, let's start off in this loose head position. So I had 3 names written down here for this week. I thought Cyril Bay had another good game for France. He's just playing well generally throughout the tournament, to be fair. He's doing pretty well. I also had Genge written down. Now, very, very aggressive in attacking, and I did write his name down quite early on in that England game, but it just began to fizzle out in that second half for me, so I wasn't fully committed to going for him. So the name I've got written down here is Fischetti, or Fischetti. There was a couple of pronunciations I saw on the game. I've always called him Fischetti, but Fischetti, I thought, had a really, really tough game. That Italy-Ireland game went all sorts of chaotic. I've had to try and adjust the Team of the Week a bit, because I'm pretty sure most people's Team of the Week would just end up being 15 Irish players because they just ran over Italy. But I think Fischetti played really well, played the entire game, because of course we had that switch going on in that hooker position. They lost their loose head going back in that hooker position, so he had to play the entire game, and you know what? He played well for the entire game with 13 men, so that's why I've gone for Fischetti. In the hooker position then, really not a lot of standouts for me. I mean, the only 2 names I had written down here were Julien Marchand and Sheehan. No one else really impressed me in any of the games, to be honest. Overall, I've gone for Sheehan, just for his attacking rate that we saw in that game. Again, I'm trying so hard not to just pick a bunch of Irish players because of how easily they were sort of getting through that Italy defence. But I did think Sheehan had a really good game. The line-outs, of course, working very well for Ireland. I don't think they lost a single line-out of their own. They managed to steal some as well. They also, of course, won 100% of the scrums. That was always going to be expected with the uncontested scrums. But overall, I think good work rate, good attacking rate, and managed to play a really good game. So that's why I've gone for Sheehan. In the tight head position, I feel like there was actually a couple of people that played quite well in the tight head position, and yet I've written down one name, and that name goes to Kyle Sinclair. And after I'm looking back at my list, I'm thinking, why have I only got one name written down? I actually think a couple of people played quite well, but only one name written down. Again, I think mainly it was for that work rate we saw from Kyle Sinclair, especially in that first sort of 60 minutes. It's such a weird game that it just began to fall off in that last 20 for England, and Wales certainly stepped up. So it's really hard to judge games across the 80 minutes when so many games were, very, very proportional. But for me, I think Cal Sinclair had a good work rate. I think the scrums were going well for England, especially in that first half. So that's why I've gone for Sinclair. On to the lock departments then. Only one name for the number 4 shirt for me, and that one goes to Cameron Varkey, who I thought did really well in that Scotland game. I thought he had really, really good presence, especially in terms of the lineouts. Gave away far less penalties than we saw him do last week, which was nice, or the week before even. He gives away a lot of penalties normally, but he's got a very high work rate, but the penalty count comes with it. But in that Scotland game, we certainly saw a lot less. Just getting on with his game, the tackles, the lineouts working very well for him. Again, attacking ball in hand, he gets involved with the carrying, but also in terms of the breakdown situation, he clears out so well, and he really stood out to me in that number 4 shirt, so I've gone for Varkey. Into the other lock department then, in the 5 shirt, I had 3 names written down here, which is unusual. I don't normally have so many locks written down. First one I thought was a Itoje. Again, quite similar to Genge and Sinclair. It was the first 60 minutes that really showed that off. There was also a bit of talk about whether or not Itoje might have got a cheeky little push on Adam Baird that led to the Alex Stormrance try. But, in terms of gamemanship, probably not very sporting of you, but if it pays off and you get a try from it, is that actually good play? Hard to tell. I also thought Ryan Baird had a really good game. against that Italy team. Again, sort of similar. We saw the back row for Ireland actually just doing quite well generally. A lot of the big carry players in that Ireland team now, certainly a big step up from their game last week. But in the end, I've gone for Valemsa from France. Again, pretty much the same reasons as Varkey, to be honest. I just thought the French team in that forward pack was doing really well, especially in terms of that line-out position was doing good. But again, ball carrying from a number 5. It's not a great deal of teams that really introduce the number 5 as their ball carrier, but Valemsa just hits the pace and just slams into the defensive line. I really, really enjoy watching him. So for me, I've gone for Valemsa. Into the flankers then, and in the 6 shirt, I had 2 names written down. First name was Peter Manny. Again, another nice game from him, having to take over his captaincy, doing well in terms of the scrummaging work until it got uncontested, and then it got sort of flat. General running play again, quite nice, certainly finding those gaps very hard. I'm going to keep repeating it. In that Italy game, there was just so many holes. It's hard to judge whether players were playing well, or there was just so much room that it sort of devalued it a little bit. But I did think he had a good game overall. But for me, the name I've gone for here is for Courtney Laws, who I thought was playing well in that game. Again, filling in that number 6 shirt. He's been out of that England team for a little bit now, but come in, taking over a captaincy as well. And thought he ran that game really well, especially with big names going off quite early on. We lost Tom Curry at half-time there as well. I thought Courtney Laws held out the game very, very well and organised his defence well. So for me, I've gone for Courtney Laws. Over to the other flanker then, in the 7 shirt. Again, 2 names written down for me here. One was Van der Fleer. Was all over the park, to be honest. He just had his hands on the ball so many times. Just so many penalties given away was the real negative for me against Van der Fleer. It just, every time he carried the ball in, he just refused to let go of the ball. And that's good when you're on your feet, not when you're on the ground. There was a couple of penalties there, so the reason I haven't gone for Van der Fleer. However, I still wouldn't have gone for Van der Fleer because the one name that I've underlined 3 times on my piece of paper when watching those games goes to Darge from Scotland. What a game that lad had. Taking over, Hamish Watson went out very early on before kickoff, and Darge had to move into that 7 shirt, took over, and had a phenomenal game. I was incredibly impressed. And to be honest, Scotland didn't miss Hamish Watson. And isn't that incredible? What an absolute attribute to someone, that you can remove Hamish Watson from a team like Scotland and just fill in Darge and you don't miss a beat at all. And arguably might have outperformed Hamish Watson in some games. So for me, absolutely hands down going for Darge. Into the 8 shirt then. Another 2 names written down here for me. First off was Alex Stormrance, who I thought, again, it's the first half thing. He got himself a try. But again, just the general tackle rate, a lot of dominant tackles from him. You know, he's a big lad. He's got a lot of weight behind him. We certainly saw in that first half an awful lot of very dominant tackles, really driving back some of the Welsh players. So that's why I wrote down his name. But for me, I'm going to go for Keelan Doris. Again, sort of similar to Van der Fleer in just how many times he had his hands on the ball. Just general, all round the park running rate. I mean, considering you've got the likes of Jack Conan just sitting there waiting on the bench. Now, a couple of people might be annoyed here because I know Keelan Doris, I can't remember how many minutes Keelan Doris played. It felt like there was a lot of switch-ups. I feel like Conan came on for Peter O'Mahony. I might be remembering that wrong. And then we had Keelan Doris moved to the 6 shirt afterwards, but he felt like he was on for an awful lot of that game. He constantly had his hands on the ball, constantly doing an awful lot of running around the park. So for me, I've gone for Keelan Doris. On to the scrum half then. 2 names written down. One name here, which I haven't gone for. It was Thomas Williams from Wales. I thought, but it was just so late in the game. It was such a shame. We saw it from that sort of 60th minute onwards. He began just to shine. I thought he did really well. But for me, it just wasn't, consistent for the rest of the game. He did really seem to be one of the attacking threats that Wales were trying to implement. I know Kieran Hardy went over for the try later on, but I did think Thomas Williams did okay. But for me, it's just going to be week on week. I think it goes to Dupont. Again, just another all-round stellar game from him. Superb running against that Scotland team, finding the room on the wing, great counter running. Again, just general play, absolutely fantastic. So for me, again, for yet another week, goes to Dupont. Onto the fly half shirt, which was a very weird position. I've got one name written down, and I don't even feel like enormously comfortable with this as a pick. It's going to go to Marcus Smith. Again, that first half, Marcus Smith seemed to just be running that park brilliantly. Thought he was absolutely fantastic. And then began to fizzle out in that second half. We saw it now 2 weeks in a row for me that he just begins to fizzle out. As soon as he missed his first kick, he got a bit angry at himself the next time he had his hands on the ball. There was something wrong with there again. He was still not quite getting. He seems to get in his own head a little bit. And I did wonder whether I just missed a name off. And then I ran through the list of other fly halves. Dan Biggar didn't really stand out for me. Joey Carberry missed a couple of kicks, and some of the crossfield kicks weren't on point. Garbisi was just under pressure in that Italy team as it was. Finn Russell, maybe people would put Finn Russell there. Again, nothing from my memories jumping out to me of being overly spectacular. And Entomac was quiet as well. So flight half's been very quiet this week. So I'm going to go for Marcus Smith, but I think that's just sort of the best out of the bunch more than anything for that one. So I'm sure a couple of people might disagree with me on that one. On to the left wing. 3 names written down here for me, and I'm not going to pick the one that everyone else is going to pick, which is going to be a lot of fun. So the 3 names I've written down here. Josh Adams, I thought did okay for Wales again. There's a lot of work going on in that England game, especially towards that second half, really began to impact the game. But I did think he was quite quiet for the first half, so that's why I haven't gone for Josh Adams. The other name that I think everyone's going to pick, which I'm not going to pick, of course, is James Lowe. James Lowe there getting his, what did he get, a hat-trick in the end? I don't even know. The only reason I'm not going for James Lowe is because of just the general ease of his game. I didn't really feel like James Lowe was doing a lot. They of course in that 20th minute the Italians lost that winger that was defending him, and then since then pretty much every single try was a bit of a walkover try. I wasn't really seeing him do anything perfectly spectacular. He did cut infield quite a few times to try and help out in the centre of the game, and every time he did, he just sort of got tackled quite easily. So although I think if you look at the stats, maybe James Lowe is by far the standout player there, I'm not going to go for it just because of the sheer ease that the game in general led to him being able to show off there. So for me, I'm going to go for Duhan van der Merwe, who I thought did very well in that game. He was one of the real threats, I think, from the Scottish pack. We saw a couple of really nice line breaks from him, especially the one that he cut straight through the middle. No one really saw him coming, had to get chased down by Damien Penaud. I think he was a really good attacking threat. I think he's finally managed to get a bit of footing in the Six Nations. He's been a little bit quiet through the Six Nations so far. I'm looking forward to see how he gets on against Italy in the next round. So for me, in the left wing, I've gone for Duhan van der Merwe. On to the inside centres. 2 names written down. First name was Dante from France, who went through a little bits and bobs in that game. He was very quiet for big periods of the game and then did something absolutely spectacular somewhere else in the game. He had a lovely try at one point, which helped me out in the Fantasy League quite a lot. But again, there was portions of time in that game where I did feel he was quite quiet, which was a bit of a shame. But for me, the name, again, another name that I've wrote down and underlined a good couple of times in this one, goes to Nick Tompkins in Wales, who just was playing out of his skin. In that first half of Wales was so downbeat. He was one of the few players I saw really working hard. Defensive effort was everywhere. Looked angry, looked aggressive, looked like he had passion for that game. Just ball on hands. He was just running through anywhere he could find. The tackles he was putting in were absolutely crazy. Absolutely think he deserves this one. So for me, in that inside centre, goes to Nick Tompkins. In the outside centre then, again, another 2 names written down here. Ficou for France, I thought had a good game. It was just a generally good game, I think, for Ficou. It wasn't nothing particularly standout, which is why I haven't gone for him. But I think general gameplay from him was quite nice. Certainly in terms of the defensive work we saw from him was working well. But for me, I've gone for Chris Harris, who, again, that attacking threat, we saw what was going on. The only big call that happened in that was in the 60th minute or so. We saw, or maybe it was even earlier, maybe even like the 55th minute, that we did see Chris Harris coming off in order for Mark Bennett to come on. So again, it's another bit of a weird one. I'm not sure if I'm particularly happy about this. So for me, I think Chris Harris might have played for less time, but overall was more impressive in the time he was on the pitch, and Ficou ran a bit more of an average game going through. So for me, that's why I'm leaning towards Chris Harris. On the right wing, we've got 2 names written down here as well. The first one, which a couple of people might be picking, I've seen a couple of talks, though I'll have to get into this one a little bit, was Cuthbert was written down here for me. Mainly because of just the meters made. Generally, he was really making an awful lot of ground with the ball in hand. The reason I haven't gone for Cuthbert, and I've not seen a lot of people talking about this, is that there were 3 breakdown penalties that all came from Cuthbert making a little bit of a break. However, one thing that is strange to me about Cuthbert is he makes these fantastic breaks or is given a bit of room to work with. But then on the break when he's running, he doesn't go for a chip over the top. He doesn't try and do a sidestep. He just runs into the fullback, which on 3 separate occasions meant he ran into the defender after making a bit of room and then had a turnover penalty against him. And in a game that ended with, 3 or 4 points difference, 9 points of that came from specifically Cuthbert at the breakdown. That was arguably the game. So that's for me is why I've not gone for Cuthbert, but I can see why a lot of people might go down that route for this one. For me, I've gone for Damien Penaud, getting his 2 tries in that game as well. I thought he was just getting on with his game is all you want to see from a winger. I thought he had a really nice defensive rate as well. We already spoke about Duan van der Merwe breaking through that big gap line. The only person that was catching him in that position was Damien Penaud. I thought defensively he held up really well, got himself 2 nice tries, and was just a really attacking threat all over the game. So for me, I've gone for Penaud. And then finally, in this fullback position, fullbacks absolutely not impressing this week. No one stood out to me. I have one name and one name written down because it was the only name that actually impressed in any form, and that goes to Lowry on his debut, having a really nice game for Ireland. Getting himself 2 tries, should have arguably been 3, just handing one to James Lowe, which he absolutely could have seen off himself. Making his debut, having a really nice impact. Again, hard to judge because of the amount of room they had on the pitch to work with, but it's up to the player to make the most of the room, and I think Lowry really did that. Was a huge attacking threat through all of the game, and I think absolutely deserve it. I don't think anyone came close to in terms of fullbacks all over the field. So for me, absolutely hands down goes to Lowry. And there we have it, guys. That is going to be my team of the week for round 3 of the Six Nations 2022. But as I say every week, make sure you guys do drop down in the comment section your team of the week, because of my specific rules. I have no doubt your teams will be incredibly different to mine, just so that way we can see everyone else's. And with the team of the week done, we of course need to talk about the fantasy leagues, and there's been a lot of big shifts this week going on. So let's start off by talking about the actual fantasy itself. So, wow, what a weird round in terms of points. I made a couple of really bad calls myself. It was the one week I decided to finally back the 100% kicking Jaminet, to have then Jaminet have the worst game he's possibly ever had in international rugby, doing nothing, kicking barely anything. So terrible choice by me. Absolutely shouldn't have gone down for that. I also picked Hansen, thinking Hansen was just going to carve apart that Italian defence, only for the Italians to get rid of the other winger and for James Lowe to just go absolutely ballistic on the other wing. So I personally made a lot of mistakes this week. So in terms of the fantasy results for the end of this week, we see Keelan at the top on 203.5, an absolutely awesome round. I think Keelan might have been the only person to have actually picked Lowry. I did have a quick look at some of the other teams. I couldn't find a lot of people picking Lowry, so that was really impressive in terms of a pick. I'm all the way down there in, I don't even know what that is, like 10th from that round in on 167.5. So certainly lost a lot of points. A lot of people catching me up there, so well done to Keelan. So in terms of the leaderboards after week 3, I'm still barely hanging on at the top there. We can see me. I'm now only 10 points ahead of Tuicha, who is catching up rapidly. And it's getting a little bit tight in this top section now. Mattarello there on 537. Dan Can't Ruck on 527. Sufton Rugby drops down 3 places to 513. Lepore on 506, Seri 2 on 505, and Kirin and Reg from the PFJ, I think it was, I can't remember, I haven't got it on the screen, is on 504.5. Wow, I mean, there is only about 50 points between 1st and 10th. Like, that is crazy. That is one big captain. We did see James Lowe this week. A couple of people picked James Lowe as captain. He scored 50 points on his own if you picked him as a captain. So that is the turnaround time in this game. It can go absolutely ballistic. Only 2 rounds left. I need to have a good round. I am barely beginning to cling on now across some of these weeks. In terms of the predictor, I had a slightly better week in terms of the predictor. I actually got all 3 calls correct this week, which was nice. However, a bunch of other people did as well, so it didn't really make a great deal of difference. So, in terms of this round, we see Lord Nicholas right out at the top there on 6 points. Absolutely clear, getting 2 of the bonus points as well as the Grand Slam there on 6. Banana there on 5. And then me there in 3rd, but I should really say joint 3rd with 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th. Joint 3rd through 8th on 4.5 just for getting them all correct and getting 1 margin point as well as the Grand Slam bonus. And then we've got Dave there down in with 4 points. Yeah, it's really beginning to shift up now. So in terms of the leaderboards for the Predictor Series, Lord Nicholas begins to storm ahead on that 15 points. Cameron Fish drops down on 12.83. Poxy on 12.58. Maddie on 12. Where am I? I'm down in 6th. I managed to recover a few places, but I'm not sure in the next 2 rounds if I can catch Lord Nicholas from here. I'm going to really need Lord Nicholas to have some bad rounds in order for me to catch up. But there we go, guys. That is going to be the fantasy results for this week. There was a couple of really fun picks going on. Hopefully, in the next round, I can do a little bit better and try and retain some of that top spot, especially in the actual fantasy league. But once again, thank you to everyone who is joining in. It is an awful lot of fun. I'm so glad there's so many people involved. The actual predictor itself has become like nigh on impossible for me. Every time I look at what other people have picked, people are picking the exact same score as me, 1 more than me, 1 lower than me. I'm never going to win that predictor unless I'm absolutely banging every week, but it does make it an awful lot more fun. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. Of course, we will be doing all of the normal videos for the rest of the Six Nations as it's going on. I am currently in the process of moving house. So it's taking a little bit longer to get some of the videos out, so apologies if there's not quite as much content going out over the next few weeks while I'm also trying to deal with all of that along with watching all the Six Nations. But I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.